Yes, we are live. Hello, lovely ladies. It's Claudia and Jade here, and today we are gonna talk about how to train in sync with your cycle. Super excited about this topic. I know that it's gonna resonate super well with the women that are part of the Recover from HA support group and that are listening to the It's a Mind Game podcast. But first of all, welcome, Jade. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking about syncing your training with your cycle, because I feel like there's a lot of mixed messages around it and it gets a bit confusing because everyone kind of has a different opinion on it. So I'm hoping, the intention anyway, is to kind of like clarify some of the smoke and mirrors that's coming around with training and cycle syncing, because it's actually not that complicated. Most ladies will hear some of this feedback and be like, oh, okay, I got it.
Smoke and mirror. I love that. And just so that you all know, I made myself a cup of tea because I'm really hoping that Jade is going to be doing all the talking this morning. But so that you all get an insight, you may know by now that our period is made of 4 different phases. There is the follicular phase, which normally happens the first couple of weeks of a menstrual cycle. Then there is the ovulation phase, which lasts for approximately 4 to 7 days, depending on the person that you are and where you are in your lifetime. And then there is the ovulatory phase, the luteal phase, which is the phase between ovulation and menstruation. And then finally, there is the show, the menstruation. And our body changes incredibly depending on which phase we are in our cycle. Our hormones fluctuate, our inflammatory markers fluctuate, our need to nourish change incredibly, and so our training routine needs to accommodate all these incredible changes that happen every single month in a woman's body. So not only we have the circadian rhythm, which is the rhythm that happens in a 24 hours window, which is what happens to men, we also have this beautiful infraradian rhythm, which is a rhythm that changes and fluctuates over a 28-day period. Women are so beautifully complicated, but we can decode it, right, Jade? And today we're gonna really support women in understanding how they can train to improve their performance and to improve their health. So all over to you, Jade. Where would you like to start?
Well, first of all, thanks for highlighting the fact that we do have the different stages and that our hormones have different levels throughout those stages, because that plays a big part in what we're going to talk about when it comes to training with your cycle. So I guess a few things to highlight before I get a little more detailed, which is the way you train to suit your cycle is very much your own lived experience. So where it gets confusing is because the marketing towards cycle syncing is very much like on your bleed, do yoga and Pilates, and when you're ovulating, go lift heavy. And, at the very start of your cycle, just after the bleed is when you can hit things really hard. So whenever you want to cycle sync your training, the first thing you want to do is actually observe your symptoms over 3 months. Those symptoms being the days when you feel like really energetic, like you, let's say, and ladies, I'm talking about those of you who have had more than 3 cycles and like your period is coming consistently and we're in a good place. You want to be highlighting when you feel super energetic, right? When you actually want to go for a run, or you want to lift really heavy weights, or you're naturally like motivated to train. You also want to highlight days where you're like, you want to train because you feel good, but the energy isn't quite there. It's like your brain's there, your body's not. It's really important to mark that down. You also want to take note of when you might not, you might read your training program and you're just like, oh, I'm just not feeling this today. I don't know why. I don't get it. I'm always excited to train. Because our perception of those moments can be, I'm not motivated, I suck. Why can't I just feel good all the time? I was good last week, not this week. But it's got nothing to do with your motivation and everything to do with what's happening with your cycle at that point in time. So if you're starting this whole process, you want to be looking at a 3-month outlook of your cycle. You want to be noting, obviously, when your bleed happens, when your ovulation's happening. So if even just noting down egg white cervical mucus is enough. It doesn't have to be temperatures or LH strips or anything. And you want to be getting a good idea as to how long your cycle's lasting, how long your bleed phase is lasting, when ovulation's happening. And then you want to add in those emotions and motivational drives, right? Because no matter what, your psychological is always going to supersede the physiological. So what is meant by that is, for the most part, when you're training with your cycle, from I'm going to talk as though a 28-day cycle, because then we've got a classic just 4 weeks, kind of keeps things simple, right? Week 1 and week 2, when you're in your follicular phase, that's the best opportunity for you to lift heavy, run fast, do your HIIT training sessions, like really push yourself. And a big reason for that is your inflammatory markers are at their lowest because the bleeds just happened, and your progesterone and estrogen are at their lowest. So if you were to physiologically be the closest to a male, it's at that point of your cycle, right? Your recovery is heightened. For the most part, your energy is at its highest. Make the most of it. Where the difference lies is, some women listening to this will go like, yeah, first 2-3 days of my period, I feel amazing. I'm like bulletproof. I want to run. I feel really great. Other women will go, oh, goodness me, no, the first 2 days of my bleed phase, I just want to cuddle up with a blanket and a hot water bottle and snuggle up. So just because I'm saying it's a great opportunity for you to lift heavy, run fast, doesn't mean you go do it. All right. Physiologically, it's a wonderful opportunity, given you've got that internal motivation to do it. All right. And that's where that sort of intuitive self comes in, because you need to be connected to what your body needs in order to maximize your cycle syncing approach. I want to pause for a second, because I know I've spoken a lot. And if anything's popped in your head, Claudia, I want to debunk that first before I jump into the other stuff. I get too excited.
Just a couple of things were popping into my head, so which
Sure.
is why I grabbed some.
I saw.
Because I didn't want to forget. But it's so great that we're having this conversation, because I remember that when I got my first period back, I was really into cycle syncing, and I was a big believer, and I ran a few workshops about how to sync our nutrition and our training with our period. But the reality is that it didn't sit right with me at all. Because just to give you an example, when I'm ovulating, it feels like I'm menstruating. I get bloated, I get moody, I don't want to exercise, I don't want to push myself. And then when it comes to the menstruation, when it comes to the bleed, I'm completely done the day before and the first day of having a bleed. But the second day comes around and I'm normally filled with energy. And so I found myself like scratching my head for a very long period of time, because all those books were saying, no, when you're ovulating, you push yourself, and when you're menstruating, you just need to do yoga and nothing else. But the reality is that my body was responding differently to this, let's say, list of things that apparently I had to follow. And plus, on the first day of the menstrual cycle, also from a nutritional perspective, it's very much recommended to eat salads and to have smoothies. And I sometimes find myself very hungry towards the beginning of the cycle. So there was always that pull of doing the right things and feeling guilty because I wasn't doing the right thing. So what you're sharing with us today, it's phenomenal, and it's just a different way of looking at it, because you're bringing in two very important, oh my God, I cannot use the right words today, but two important subjects. One is follow your intuition, meaning you actually know what is going on with your body. But unfortunately, because we have been living in this world bombarded by information, our intuitive self, it's so hard to find and so hard to listen to. But the second one, which is super useful, is to actually track down your symptoms. So if you have a period, track down your symptoms and how you perform for 3 months, and then speak to Jade, speak to myself, so then we can come up with a plan to really support your training. So I really apologize for stopping you halfway, and please, let's go back to what you were talking about. But I just wanted to underline the importance of tracking the symptoms, tracking what is going on, and also tap into the intuitive self and listen to your body cues already.
No, I'm so glad you shared that story as well, because I actually felt the same way. And I think that's why I'm really passionate about helping women work out how to match their training to their cycle. Because I mean, I love reading Alyssa Vitti's stuff and I love researching cycle syncing methods and things. But I found a lot of the like literature that I read actually didn't relate to me. So, as an example, for me, first 2 days of my period, I don't want to lift heavy and I really don't want to run. Like, I actually do you want to kind of just have a bit of a stretch and relax, right? But the science of it is my inflammatory markers are down, my hormones have dropped, like go hit it. And I just don't feel that way. And if I was to purely go by the research, I'm going to feel like I suck because the research is saying go lift heavy things. And I'm sitting here going, no, it's not a good day for that. It is not a good day. But when you start to have confidence in listening to what your body wants and what it needs, all I need is to wait till day 3. Once I hit day 3, it's like my body settled itself. My personality kind of resurfaces. I want to be social. I want to get out and about. And I actually want to burn some energy. I'm really excited to do it. And that's over time that's built up because now I have the confidence of knowing that, oh, I've noticed that the first 2 days of my bleed, I just don't feel like doing anything. And then I feel great. Or some women, like you've probably heard this before, Claudia, as well, like around ovulation is when you feel like incredible and you've got this intense energy boost. But a lot of women around ovulation, because the hormone fluctuation happens quite quickly, a lot of women get a real big dip. Like they actually have zero energy. They have very low motivation. And if you're listening to all this external stuff going, ovulation is the time when you go, 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 and you're sitting there going, oh my God, I feel like crap, it's going to mess with your head because they're telling you how you should feel. And the reality is, you know how you feel. So when you're cycle syncing, you're utilizing a little bit of the science because it helps and we want to know and use it. And the other part is your own unique intuition, which is I've actually learned there's a rhythm of when I'm excited to train, when it's a good time to hit things hard, and when it's a good time to focus on skill and mobility, which is where we lead into the second half of the cycle, right? So we start to have the hormonal changes and we've had the little dip of ovulation and the second half of our cycle. So again, I'm basing it on a 28-day just to keep it more simple. So week 3 is when you're in your early luteal phase and you want to start including more steady state work, descending sets. So rather than building your sets up in weight up, you're starting to do like a drop set for the bodybuilders out there. For the ladies that are doing more endurance athletes, you can still do your runs and your bike rides, but you might find that you drop the pace down a little bit. Or if you want to keep pace, drop your distance a little bit, because we're kind of tapering down the intensity. And then week 4, which is when your inflammatory markers are at the highest because you're building the lining that's about to shed, which is such a cool process, isn't it? It's like our body intentionally inflames so that we can grow this beautiful lining and then release it if there's no pregnancy. I remember learning that and just being like, oh my God, we're so amazing. We're so amazing. So if you think about that, it's really cool because the reason you want to prioritize recovery in those points, and recovery is multifaceted, right? So for some, it could be doing yoga, Pilates, it could be doing a super slow jog, like leisurely, you're still keeping your distance. Or it could be a bike ride where you're keeping the distance, there's no time frame on it. If you're a bodybuilder, it could be going through more drills of movements, or if you're an Olympic lifter, where you're still doing the movement patterns, you're just not loading the bar up. All right. So you're working on perfect execution, or you're working on mind muscle connection. So you're focusing on feeling the muscle squeeze and letting it release. It could be focusing on stretching or movement patterns. Like there's actually so much you can do in that week that's still working towards your goal. But if your body's already inflamed, we don't want to add extra inflammation because you're training really hard and heavy. Any of the athletes out there listening going, but what if I have a competition the week before my period? What do I do? Again, psychological always supersedes. Like if you want to go hard, you will absolutely be able to. We're just talking about a long-term strategy that's going to help your hormones keep in a beautiful rhythm, and to keep injuries at a minimum, to keep your motivation at a high, is that you want to have that kind of sway. But if you need to compete, it doesn't matter what stage of your cycle you're at. The only implication would be if you get, like, say, really heavy bleeding and then you've got to compete on the day. Well, of course, that could affect your performance, but it would be something more extreme like that versus, just your basic cycle sort of ebb and flow. I'm going to pause again in case more questions have popped up.
But compared to the one that we have been taught until now, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, work out when fasted, or just go to work, and then when it's 6 o'clock at night, work out before going to dinner, and just make sure that you do kind of the same thing every single day, push yourself every single day as if you are a man. And only recently we have come to understand that we are completely different from men from a biological, hormonal, and physiological perspective. And this cycle syncing can actually improve our health, and it can also improve our mental health, because all of a sudden, if you listen to your body, if you listen to your intuition, you're not as stressed, you're not producing the same amount of epinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol on an ongoing basis. And you also allow yourself to rest for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, Jade, and this is kind of a tricky one. How can you look, women do very well with following instructions, right? Which is why women are so fantastic when it comes to following diets. So for example, if someone comes to you and they ask for a training program, they may ask you for a training program based on their menstrual cycle, and it will be so easy to take it home and actually train by following that specific program. How can someone combine that program that follows the natural period to their own intuitions? How can they follow that program?
So you're saying, like, let's say someone's purchased a training block online that's got like a stock standard protocol, and how to extract that and apply it to what we're learning today.
Yeah, apply it to cycle syncing, but also apply to their own intuition. How can I actually listen to their own intuitions without feeling guilty, without second guessing their needs, without second guessing what the body is actually telling them? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, of course. No, I get excited and I jump in too quick. So I just wanted to make sure that you were finished talking. So there's there's two elements to that. So just to talk about, like, how we think we're the same as men and we kind of train the same as men, we also are very good extracting information that supports how we want to train. Because if you look at most professional athletes, I say most, if you look at every single professional athlete on the planet, whether it be competitive sport, bodybuilding, tennis, any of the sports at all, everyone has a deload week or a part of their training cycle where they reduce capacity. Everybody, right? It's just, we tend to get stuck in this. We need to be 100% all the time, if not 110, 120, which is where it doesn't work. So when you're looking at cycle syncing, a key element of it is that week before your period is a deload week, right? So if you're a bodybuilder, you would have a deload week, but your coach might make it every 5 or 6 weeks. If you're wanting to cycle sync, then you're making it the week before you bleed, right? Or perhaps 3 days before you bleed, 3 days into the bleed, where you're taking your intuition into it. And if you are following a training plan from a personal trainer, the best way you could start to do an audit on it is to actually keep doing what you're doing, because if you change everything quickly, you don't know, right? So what I would say is you keep doing a training program, but you're going to note down the markers. You're going to note down the days when you follow through your program. You're incredibly excited to start. You feel great when you finished. Perhaps you produced the numbers that was expected, or you did better. And you also note down the days where it's difficult to lift a weight that should feel relatively easy. You note down the days where you kind of feel like you're showing up to the gym because you know you should be there, versus like, oh my gosh, I love my program, I can't wait to do it. And you also want to note down the days when you kind of feel like twingy. Now, when you kind of feel like you're not injured, but you just feel like everything's a bit grindy, right? Like you might do a shoulder press or you might run in, it just doesn't feel smooth like normal. Noting down those areas, because you'll start to notice that despite your training cycle, there will be rhythms where you feel really great, you're super energetic, You feel really great, but your body doesn't, like it's not matching where your mind's at. Once you have that data, you can then pretty much attach the training program to the cues your body's giving you. So I wish it was like a super clean cut answer, but essentially you need to do an audit on what you're thinking, feeling, and what your recovery is like. And once you've got that and you can see a bit of a pattern, you then almost imprint your training onto it. Am I talking circles?
No, not at all. And I have 2 follow-up questions.
Please,
One is
yeah.
very dumb, but I think lots of women need to hear this one. Why do we need rest days?
Because we like to torture you. No, because your body needs time to heal and repair, right? And I could go super sciencey on you all, but it's boring. But the reality is, if you want to achieve the best physique, if you want to achieve the best athletic performance, you must prioritize rest. And if you're not prioritizing it, you're not doing it to be a better athlete or to be a better human. You're doing it because your brain is leading you to believe that you can't, but it's a lie. If you look at some of the best athletes in the world, after there's, oh gosh, who won the CrossFit Games? I forget his name. He's got a mullet. I think last year when he won, he took a whole month off training, just like that. Didn't train for a month, right? He just got best in the world. And the reason he can do that is because he's being logical about it and not emotional. Yeah, he's followed like a 12-month vigorous program with deload weeks, with days off. And then he had his grand finale at the end and he goes, oh, my body and mind needs a break. We all need it. So if your body needs time to grow, it needs time to heal. So if you're going to throw a stress response at it, you also need almost like a tennis ball, right? Throw a tennis ball at the wall. You can't catch it before it's hit the wall. You've got to wait for it to bounce back at you. Your training program is much the same. Your actual hands-on training is the throw at the wall. You let it bounce. Your rest day is the pause to catch it again, right? And then you can hit training hard.
And we can apply the same concept to everything in life. Also the way that we do business, for example, which is why we have at least 1 or 2 days off every single week, because our brain needs to rest, needs to recharge, needs to do something different. Same thing with a relationship. We can't always hang out with the same people. We can't always have sex every single day, because our body needs to recharge, needs to heal, needs to focus on something else. My follow-up question is going to be quite hard though. Lots of the women that follow us, they don't have a period. They haven't had a period for a very long time, and they may be very interested in cycle syncing. So how can we apply cycle syncing to hypothalamic amenorrhea, or can we do it?
Yeah, of course. So either way, you're going to have natural fluctuations throughout your energy. So I would say your priority in that situation is more intuition focused, which is wonderful, because if you're going through HA recovery, it's because you've been overwhelmed with rules and rigidity versus what you're actually thinking and feeling. So if you're in HA recovery, let's say you're strength training, right? You still want to be noticing the days when you're excited to train, the days when you're kind of showing up because it's your routine. And you also want to be recognized the days that you feel strong versus the days where you don't feel as strong. Regardless of period or no period, you must be having a deload week, right? So some of you might go, yeah, but I don't know when my deload week is. Just pick one, right? Because it's almost like a pulse is going to go through your system of, oh, well, I've got to rest. Now I can start again. Some ladies find comfort in choosing their deload week that falls in line with a certain moon phase, right? So I'm not too familiar with moon phases, but I've got a couple of clients who they're using the moon as their guidance for their 4 stages of their cycle, right? And if that works for you, and absolutely, that's wonderful. So you'd have your 2 weeks where you're just kind of progressing up, and then you'd slowly drop down, have your deload week, start again. Either way, it's going to help your body recover and repair. Main things I would consider if you're in HA recovery and you're still training is you want to make sure that you're keeping your heart rate below, say, 130 beats, because we want to minimize that cortisol and adrenaline as much as possible in that stress response. If you want to keep lifting, focus on more isolation movements rather than compound, so single muscles versus lots, because again, it's just going to keep the stress response lower. Or if you do want to do compound movements, pick like 1 per session. So if you're doing a legs day, just do squats, and then keep the rest as, say, leg extensions or hammy curls or, yeah.
Sorry if I interrupt you, but for all the people that really don't know the difference between isolation and compound, can you just give us an example of 2 different exercises, one isolation and one compound?
Of course. So an isolation movement is when you're isolating one muscle. So using one versus multiple. So a good example would be if you're doing, a bicep curl. So your arms are extended and then you curl them up. So your wrists come to your shoulders and drop them back down. That's an bicep isolation movement. A compound movement would be a chin up. Right. So you're pulling down, or it could be a seated row. So arms are in front and you're pulling your elbows in by your side because they're utilizing your back muscles as well as the bicep. If you were looking at legs, it could be your compound movement might be a squat, right? So barbell on your back, squatting down. An isolation movement would be a leg extension. So you're sitting on the leg extension machine, you lock your legs out and then you drop them back down. And that's isolating your quad muscle.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And Jade, I know that this is going to be a great opportunity for you and for us to talk about the HA community and the work that we do. But I think that the next question, the final question, is going to be super important to be addressed. What can women do if they cannot take a rest day?
Start small. I think we get so overwhelmed with grand gestures that we're paralyzed by the idea of change. If you're in a position where you just are paralyzed by the idea of a rest day, pick one day where you can do one set less than what you normally do. Pick a day where instead of walking as fast as possible, perhaps you grab a coffee and go for a walk with a friend. So it just slows you down a little bit. If you feel like you can swap from a weight session to a yoga session, that's still incredibly helpful. Like some people consider yoga a rest day because it's like active movement, but it's not stimulating the stress response. That's fine. But honestly, even if you're taking away 1 minute from like a 30-minute HIIT workout, if you can practice that multiple times, then go 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you'll have your rest day, in no time at all. All right. So I just want you to almost just find one thread that you can pull on and just practice it for a couple of weeks. And then when you build up the confidence, pull another one. This is a marathon. Any of you who feel like you just need to change your training routine like that, I wish. Anyone who can do that, absolutely do it. But if you don't feel that way, you're probably the majority. You just got to find the wiggle room.
And that's the difference between working with you or just listening to all the advices that are written online. So normally they say that it's very important if you want to get your period back to have multiple rest days every single week and to stop training altogether. And instead, when women work with you, you actually take them from where they are and you build their resilience. You motivate them to incorporate changes that they didn't even know that they could do by themselves. And I had the most awesome call with one of the members of the HA community and the period comeback protocol this morning. She has been afraid of taking rest days since she's been alive. And she came to me and she said, Claudia, but I cannot just sit in the couch all day and just walk to the kitchen and back. I cannot do that right now. And I was really surprised because to me, that's not a rest day at all. That's a day where you're sick or injured and you're forced down all day long. So taking a rest day, it's very different from one person to another. And I think that it's super important to underline it. And if you actually try and take a rest days and you notice that you cannot do it, beautiful. That's a sign, that's a red flag that maybe you need that extra support moving forward, so that you can follow steps that can be useful for you specifically to get back to your health.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said so beautifully, it's like rest day is dependent on what the individual needs. Like for some women, a rest day will always be going for a walk because it just makes them feel good and they enjoy it. And it's, I will explore this on a podcast, I'm sure, Claudia, in the future, but it's the idea that your decisions around movement should come from a logical place and not an emotional place, right? So if it's your rest day and you're just going for a leisurely walk because you can, because you feel like, because your girlfriend's going or your partner's going or your dog is restless, like go for it. Exercise is like movement is so good for our bodies. The issue is when it's like, I feel like I can't not do it. All right. That's what needs the work. But sometimes I think that eat more, train less can really plant the idea that we want women on the couch not moving. And it's just not true. Okay, I don't think that's helpful for any of us. But that's where it's good to have conversations with people like yourself or me to get clarity on expectations and what's workable for the individual going through HA recovery. Because you could decide that resting on the couch all day on a Sunday with your feet up watching Netflix is the best thing for you to do. And if that is the best thing for you to do, like, power to you. Fantastic. But if the best thing for you to do is to make your rest day, you still go into the gym, you do half of your workout, and then the other half you just stretch, that's a great start. You just reduced half of your workout. Power to you.
Absolutely. And Jade, is there anything else that you think it's really important for you to share in regards to the cycle syncing method before we finish off?
Yeah, try not to get drowned in what everyone is telling you to feel, which just links into that idea of, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, like if you're on your bleed phase, only do yoga and Pilates, but you're kind of like itching because you've got this energy to burn. Like if you're itching and it's not coming from an emotional space, like you actually feel so energetic and excited to go train, fantastic. Same as if you feel like it's just not a good day to train, despite whatever you're reading saying, no, it's go time, you're ovulating, go for it. It's not true. Like whatever your body is feeling is what your body needs and wants. And that's going to be your biggest superpower. It even doesn't matter what I've said or anybody else says. If you can tap into that, you'll be invincible.
I love that so much. Can I share a sentence that I read only a few days ago, just to finish off? So we have been immersed in messages talking about the diet industry and the fitness industry since the day that we were born. And we have been trained to distrust our own wisest instincts. When you say to a specific woman, train less or eat more, you're yelling into a hurricane of messages and a whole value system that is saying the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
When I read that sentence, and this is taken very much out of context because the book was talking about something completely different, but when I read the sentence, I was like, yeah, we got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really tapping into our instinct right now, and we think that we need to follow another plan, another fitness plan, another diet, or what someone is sharing on internet, when our body is already sending you the strongest signals, and you are the wisest person in terms of knowing what to do when it comes to supporting your health, hormonal and not.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Jade, thank you so much for being here today. It has been super fantastic. And we're going to get back to you soon anyway. But is there any last word of wisdom that you would like to share with all the beautiful ladies that are listening in?
Well, for one, thanks for listening this far in. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something new. And if you have any questions about it, you can always reach out to Claudia or I, and we are more than happy to help you. But just more than any, practice listening. Like it's whether it be to your hunger cues, to what your body needs movement-wise, to what your emotional needs are. Just try and start blocking out all of the messages and just tuning into that subconscious of yours, right? Because whether it's something that's leading you down a path you know isn't helpful, it's still good to know that, because the only way to correct it is to know that there's something not helpful there. And if it's something that's leading you in a positive direction, well, by all means, the more reason you should observe it and listen to it. So more than anything, training, food, the lot, just work on silencing all the noise and tuning in.
Love that so much. So thank you so much, Jade, for being here once again, and wishing all of you a fantastic day. And if you're interested in becoming part of the Period Comeback Protocol or the HA community, or working with Jade and I, just let us know in the comment section. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.